All right, this is great. Last day. I know everyone here knows a decent amount about AI by now. It's been really a hot topic for a while, and what I want to do is I want to make sure everyone's kind of up to speed with I want to make sure that there's a kind of general, broad understanding of this entire topic, because we hear little things, we hear about little applications of AI, or we hear, a new kind of AI, but we don't. I want to take a step back and make sure we have just a big, broad picture, because that's really important, and also just make sure everyone's up to speed, because things change so quickly with AI that every time I do this talk, there's something new to say. So it's a lot to do. I'm going to talk really fast. I want to start by zooming out. If you want to think about a topic like AI, to actually really wrap your head around this topic, you need to start from like this crazy helicopter view over human history. And that's the mindset that we need to get into. So let's just look at this for a second. This is, some people say human history is 200,000 years, 300,000 years, or that we've been behaviorally modern for 50,000 years, but let's just say 100,000. And the last 2 centuries is that tiny little last red area over there. So if this is a book, if you're an alien and you come across it, you're a historian of primitive species on other planets. And so you go and you read the history of humanity, and it's a 500-page book so far, just say. That's 1 page for every 200 years. So the alien's reading, and it gets to like page 450, and it's a really boring book. Nothing is happening. This is just hunter-gatherers still, just doing their thing. That takes us all the way to 10,000 years ago. You have the agricultural revolution. Okay, page 450, the very end of the book, something interesting is starting to happen. From there, you have another kind of slow 30 or 40 pages, some advancements, but it's nothing that exciting. And then things start to go insane. On page 490 is when AD starts. So AD is the epilogue of the book. And by the time you get to page 499, the world is somewhat sensible to this alien. It's okay, I think I have a handle on what's going on. Now, just to think about what the experience would be like turning to page 500, which is right around when the Industrial Revolution happens. This is the last page, okay? We get to a point when suddenly, after 499 pages of this alien reading about transportation being horses and sailboats and walking, that's it. Suddenly, on the last page, they're flying around, they're going to the moon, they're driving cars, they're on trains. None of this existed on the first 499 pages. For communication, the aliens become very accustomed to, for the entire book, people communicating by speaking most of the time, and then towards the end, they started writing handwritten letters. They were able to use writing. Okay. Page 500, there's the internet. They're FaceTiming. They're on the phone, they have TV, they have mass broadcast. It's just crazy. They can record themselves on video. They can take photographs, all on the last page. On the first 499 pages, there was under 1 billion people for that whole time. On the last page, the population ballooned past the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 billion person marks. So I say this just to remind you that it is not naive to think that this is a crazy time. It is our instinct to kind of think everyone thinks they live in a crazy time, and this is just another time. It is truly it's different. It's the climax of the movie. If you're the alien reading the book, and of course, hopefully, it doesn't end on page 500. So you're turning to page 501, being like, okay, this is getting good. What's going to happen to this species? Something's going to happen to this species. What's going to happen? That's when we were all born. So keeping that in mind all the time when you're thinking about your career, when you're thinking about the rest of your life, is good, because it's the reality, and we are not programmed to think that way, because it was never the case when we were programmed that things change quickly. So we have to override that, and that's the mindset you have to have when you talk about something like AI. So what does it mean for the future? What is page 501? What's going on in the beginning of this first page, this next page, which we're turning right now? The thing we have to remember is, if history looks like this, if it really is this kind of exponential, crazy thing happening where so many amazing advances happened on the 500th page, then if it really is like this, the person standing there, it just doesn't feel that way. And it's because we have a kind of present bias. We are, again, what were we optimized? You're not really optimized for your time. You're optimized for the environment of your ancestors by evolution, because evolution doesn't move that quickly. Normally, that's fine, because normally things don't change that quickly. If you were around 10,000 years ago, when your body thinks it's around, that's when it's supposed to be around. This is not supposed to live in an advanced civilization. Then the life of your great-great-great-grandmother was really similar to yours. It's probably the same piece of land, doing the same kind of things. So when someone says predict the future, we are programmed to kind of say, okay, let's just assume a trajectory based on what's happened in my experience. In my life, this much has changed, so let's apply that to the future. Maybe someone a little savvier might say, well, actually, things have been changing more in the last 20 or 30 years than in the time before that. So what if it keeps going at that rate? Maybe we have a trajectory that looks like that. But those are both totally wrong, because we are not wired to understand compound growth and exponential thinking. As anyone who knows about finance knows, that humans are not good at understanding compound growth. So really, the kind of trajectory you need is something like this. And there's so much evidence of that out there. If you look around, you have things like driverless cars. This is something that is very quickly happening, and very quickly people are already starting to get used to the idea. But like your kids or your grandkids will say, so everyone just operated heavy machinery? Like, how did you all know how to do that? And you'll be like, we didn't. We were awful at it. We were texting. It was just like this bad situation. But it's going to seem crazy that all cars had a human driver. That's going to seem really old school really soon. There's a big VR revolution happening that is slow, and it's not really hyped up right now because it's still too expensive. It's coming down quickly. And there's a lot of people who are in VR who are pretty sure that in about 10 years, there will be 1 billion people in the world with basically a VR tiny little headset in their pocket. And all the implications of all the different ways that could change everything with training and communication and gaming, and just a lot of people might live a lot of their lives in a really happy place somewhere that's not where they physically are. There's a ton of stuff going on here. Your grandkids, again, might say, so if everyone just, in your time, just had a baby and they just hoped it was a good baby, and you're just like, yeah, we just literally just hoped we had a good baby, and that's going to seem crazy. Of course, by then, people will be able to design babies to be the exact kind of baby they want. And that sounds weird to us. That sounds so creepy and wrong. But you know what else sounded weird was organ transplants sounded like Frankenstein when they started. There are all these articles you can go back and read of people saying this is awful, this is playing God. Now everyone likes organ transplants, and I suspect that when you can make sure that your baby is healthy and better looking than you, people will be happy about that. There's some cool stuff going on here. Right now, brain-machine interfaces, the idea of actually having some kind of hardware attached to your brain that can speak to the outside world, is only used for disabilities. So, someone who is quadriplegic can now move a mouse on a screen using their mind. They can basically tell that they can try to move their arm up and down, which they can't do anymore. But the motor cortex, which gives that command, is still doing that. It's just that the wire is broken between the remote control and the actual hardware. So now instead, it can go to a mouse on a screen or a bionic arm, and the brain-machine interface can understand what the motor cortex is commanding, and then command the bionic arm to do that. It's very primitive technology right now. We can only interface with a couple hundred neurons at once out of billions, literally billions, that we want to be, but that is moving quickly. There's a Moore's law kind of thing going on there with that number of neurons that we can simultaneously interface with going up exponentially. So that could turn in from disabilities to very quickly augmentation, where everyone is doing this, where now we can think with each other. We can think with an AI. So imagine Siri 30 years from now, this unbelievably advanced system that we can just get answers from, and it won't even feel like we're getting answers from an external thing. It'll feel like it's just part of our brain. We're just thinking, and we have all this information in our brains. This is another thing that there's just too many things. If any one of these was the only big innovation, it would be a big story all the time. But there's so much right now because we were born in the climax of this movie. There's too much to even focus on. But the Neil Armstrong of Mars, whoever that is, will be touching down like in the next 10 years, almost definitely. I mean, that is the trajectory that seems fairly predictable at this point. That's ridiculous. That's one of the great leaps for all of life in billions of years of Earth life, and it's going to happen in our lifetimes. You're not supposed to be able to witness one of the great leaps for all of life. And then that could turn into an entire colony on Mars at some point that, again, we'll look back and think about the days when it seemed so impractical and so silly, and of course, later it'll seem like this obvious thing that, of course, we live on 2 planets. So we'll get to AI now, and all of that is a reminder that this is part of a bigger story, that this is a symptom of the big story that we are all in that is hard for us to absorb. And when you have that in your head, that's when you can think correctly about AI and actually think intelligently about it. So there's a bunch of things I want to kind of get into here, and the first one is just making sure that we actually define intelligence the right way. Because if artificial intelligence, well, what are we talking about? There's a really important distinction that people in the AI world and people who know about AI, use it, but most people don't really think of this distinction as much as they should. And it's the difference between narrow and general intelligence. So narrow intelligence looks like this. So if it can do one skill. It's good at one thing. So this is like a system, an AI that is really smart at doing its task, whether that's a task is assessing, diagnosing a medical situation, or whether that thing is trying to win at chess. It's good at that one thing. General intelligence means it's something that's smart in general. So humans, this is where we are. We have fairly low, but in magnitude, but very broad intelligence. And this is what makes humans so amazing, is that you can be smart at anything. Like, you can learn one skill, and then you can learn another skill, and then you have, social skills, and you have, creativity, and you have wisdom, and you've got all of these different kinds of intelligence that have nothing to do with each other. You can do them all. It's this absolute miracle that the brain is this generalized intelligence machine. It can process information of all kinds. And then it can do all these different things with it. So AI cannot do this. There's no AI in the world that can do anything like that. But what it does do, it crushes us at. So this is where AI is right now. We have a lot of AI that is absolutely stunningly good at what it is programmed to do. But it can't do anything else. It's not generally intelligent. And really, when we think of smart, someone who's smart, we're assuming general intelligence. So under that definition, there's really no AI yet that is smart like a human at all. But that's the big question is, when and what would that be like? But before we get there, we want to just talk about artificial narrow intelligence for a second, because you don't need general intelligence for AI to completely transform the world. In the 1880s, electricity went from basically not only being used in some industrial uses to in like everyone's home. When electricity finally got rolling, it infiltrated absolutely everything. And now, try living 1 minute of your day today without electricity. It is in every single possible part of our lives. The internet is a little like that. It's kind of become part of everything, and AI is very quickly becoming like that as well. ANI, narrow intelligence, is everywhere. So a lot of places that you don't necessarily think of, because everyone knows where the AI is in the industries they work in. But you forget that when you go on Amazon and it says, people who bought this also bought that. There's not some guy at Amazon being like, Jeff would love this. I've been thinking about Jeff. No, it's obviously, this is an AI doing this. Your news feed is made by an AI algorithm. When you flew here, if you flew here, the ticket price was set by an AI. The gate you flew into was set by an AI. If you drove here, the anti-lock brake system in your car, the system that fine-tunes the fuel injection parameters, all done by AI. It's all over the place. Of course, if you used a GPS, you're collaborating with an AI. We do it all the time. One of the guy who actually coined the term AI, John McCarthy, was frustrated. He said, once it works, no one calls it AI anymore, because And that's the thing, is sometimes you forget that actually AI is about as big a part of our lives as electricity and the internet, and at least if it's not quite there, it will be. So just on that alone, it is infiltrating everything, and right now this is just the tip of the iceberg of what is going to be infiltrating over the next maybe 6, 7, 8 years. So let's just talk just about 2025. I mean, that is similar. Like some of you won't even be that much fatter in 2025. Like this is really soon, okay? And so 6 years though. I mean, think about the years between 1998 and 1999 and 2005, 20 years ago. In 1999, no one really knew about Google yet. It was this kind of very new product. There was no such thing as social networking. Cell phones were still kind of new. By 2005, everyone was on Facebook, and Google, of course, was ubiquitous, and cell phones were ubiquitous. We were 1 year away from the iPhone, so things can change quickly. And if you remember our graph, things change quicker in the future than they did in the past. So we might have as much change in this 6 years as we did from 1999 to 2015, something really extreme like that. So gaming is the best way, I think, to measure how ANI is really doing. How is it growing? What's the metric? You can't just look at the stock chart to see how it's growing. So gaming is interesting because different games have different degrees of freedom, more ability to make choices. So different games are there's a huge range of difficulty in making an AI that can beat a human at a game. So an easy example is tic-tac-toe. If I teach you guys to code and build some kind of game, a tic-tac-toe playing AI, it wouldn't be very hard to get it to be the perfect tic-tac-toe player. On the first move, you have 9 or 8 options, and then that goes down from there. There's not very many degrees of freedom. The decision tree is small, so you can literally just account for every single possibility, and it can pick the optimal one. Checkers is harder, but still easier than chess. So when AI was already beating humans at checkers, people said in the early 90s that it was not, that never would it be, there would be an AI that could beat humans at chess. There's just too many degrees of freedom. It's too complex. There's too much planning ahead. And then IBM built Deep Blue, who beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess master, in 1996. And AI has never looked back. Now AI has gotten, the free app, chess app on your phone, could beat every expert in the world simultaneously, instantaneously. So this was a surprise. But despite there being there's a lot of degrees of freedom in chess. After the first move, there's 400 possible configurations of a chessboard after 2 moves. So that's a lot. But there's a game called Go in East Asia that's huge in East Asia. I mean, some of you may have heard of it, but it's really, really a big deal there. And it's a 19 by 19 board with these black and white chips. Americans think it's Othello. It's not Othello. It's this different thing. But it's this really, really cool, complex game that actually has, the people who play it, they talk about it like it's more of an art. They don't even necessarily know why they made the move they made. The experts, they say it just felt right. In chess, that's not what's happening. In chess, they know exactly why. They say, I'm planning this thing and hoping it works. They have a specific plan. In Go, it's hard for the players playing to even tell who's winning. It's not even that obvious. So it is a really different thing. Plus, the number of configurations on a Go board there's a 10 to the 170th possible configuration. That's more than the number of atoms in the universe squared. So there's no way to brute force this. Even after 2 moves, I said in 2 moves in chess, there's 400 possibilities. There's 235,000 possibilities in Go after 2 moves. You cannot brute force this. So this gets to an interesting thing. Machines in the old days could do, right? You had factory machines. There was machines that could do. Then we started with this big basic AI. You could have machines that could think. So Deep Blue is a machine that can think. It's an expert system, which is kind of good old-fashioned AI, GoFi. It's the AI that was always around, till recently, and its expert system is great, but it's based on logic, and every single thing it does is because it was programmed to do that by a programmer, which means it is limited by the knowledge of the programmer. The programmer has to know everything that the AI can do. Otherwise, it can't do something. So it can't handle unpredictable situations, and it can't handle a game like Go. It just can't. There's too much. A programmer can't program everything you can do. So you ran into a ceiling with expert systems, which is why people said the same thing about Go they did about chess. Just as recently as 2015, 2014, people said, no AI will ever beat a human in Go. Or the ones who said they said it would happen 15 years from now. DeepMind is one of the world's leading AI companies. They were bought by Google, based in Oxford, and they decided to take this on. And so they said that they took advantage of a newer kind of AI, a fancier kind of AI, which is machine learning. You hear that term, but that's a fundamental step up. That goes from machines that can do, to machines that can think, to machines that can learn. So a machine that can learn means that it can do things that the programmer doesn't even understand why it did it, but it can do it. It's a whole different level. And so they built this system using its classic kind of neural network. They model it more after the brain as opposed to after logic, like an expert system is modeled. And they use this thing called reinforcement learning, which means they basically tell an AI, here's a game. So the example that they started with was Atari games like this. So Breakout. All the AI knew, this was the very beginning, all the AI knew was the pixels on the screen, so it literally just has data. It just has the arrangement of the pixels and their color, and how that color is changing. And then it knows that it has two commands. It can move this one set of pixels right or left, and it knows the final score, and then it's programmed with its goal, which is make that score as high as possible. That's it. It doesn't understand that it's even playing a game. It can't see the game the way we can see it. It just knows what the pixels are doing, and it knows its goal. So it starts off, and it's awful. It's just doing nothing. It's not even moving its thing. And then when it moves, it has nothing to do with the ball. So they ran it, and it took only 300 times for it to play. And it plays, it sees the score, it adjusts its play, it sees the new score, it adjusts its play, it sees the new score. 300 games, and it was playing perfectly. But then they left it going for another 200 games. And after 500 games, it was doing this trick, where it gets to the side, and then it goes up and bounces around the top, which is less risky, and also it's really efficient. So it had mastered it, and it actually had innovated. The programmers who made it didn't even know about that trick. So they weren't breakout experts. And so this is an example of, this is now an AI that can not just even learn, but it can actually innovate. So this was exciting, but it's Atari. It's very simple. So now they said, let's see what we can do with Go. So a few years later, the system was now ready to play the world's leading Go master. And really, people did not think that the AI was going to win, but it did. So the program was called AlphaGo. And in 2016, it played Lee Sedol, the world's #1. And if you look here, I don't have a laser. Actually, I can just circle it. There we go. This was a famous moment, because this is the Go equivalent of having the ball go up and break out over the top. In Go, early on, I don't understand Go very well, so I'm repeating what I've been told about this, but early on, it is very weird, kind of wasteful, suboptimal strategy to play on the 5th line or higher. So all the moves, if you notice, all the other moves are on the 4th line from the edge or closer to the edge. The 3rd and 4th line are where most of the pieces go. Playing on the 5th line is unheard of. So it makes no sense at all, so much so that the announcer said this must be a mistake. And then they were kind of laughing, saying, well, it's good, but it's not good yet. It's not that good yet. Until 100 moves later, there was a battle going on down there early on. 100 moves later, those two pieces, that battle had moved and moved and moved until it connected perfectly with this piece, which was this incredible moment that won AlphaGo the match. And people were so mind blown. And so all these experts now started looking at this, and they started innovating on their own games. They were learning things from this system. So not only did it win, but it was actually innovating, and that is something that machines have absolutely never been able to do. They've been able to look at a million games and kind of learn and play based on what they've seen, just kind of copy what the experts do. This was different. So this is a really big deal, because there's a lot more degrees of freedom, and there was a whole different kind of AI caliber going on. In 2017, the same thing happened with poker, another game that has lying in it, is bluffing, it's an art. Well, Lebradas is a game that it plays one-on-one against the best poker players in the world, and for a while, the poker players were winning the first 7 days of this 4-week trial. Then Lebradas started to catch on, never looked back, didn't lose again. It now basically cannot be beaten by a human in a long enough game because it's playing game theory optimal poker. So again and again, we are learning this thing that when we think AI will never be able to do this, we're proven wrong. We get embarrassed when we think that. So what other things? What other games? Remember, the AI doesn't know any of this as a game. It's just doing a task. It's just strategizing. It's just using a simple kind of, it's doing its goal. So what are other kind of games? How about the game of driving? So the Tesla platform alone has already driven, the AI has driven 1 billion miles. And you have to remember is when you run into a deer on the highway, you see one, you're going to be awful at dodging it because it's your first time. You don't know how to deal with that. You don't have the muscle memory yet. But when one Tesla sees a deer, that whole platform, that experience syncs to the whole platform. So quickly, the AI is, the Tesla AI driver is so much better and more experienced because it has 1 billion miles under its belt, and no human has even a 0.1% of that. That's just going to go up and up. How about the game of radiology? Mammograms are notoriously difficult to get right. It's just a very hard thing, and 20% in the wrong. People either incorrectly diagnose that there is breast cancer or they miss it when there is, and it's awful either way. They tried to they actually did a trial of humans at the Houston Methodist Hospital against AI. They tested over a trial over a few months. The humans did their normal thing. They got it right 80% of the time. The AI got it right 99.6% of the time. This is like chess. This is like Go. Once the AI gets there, it never looks back. How about the game of law? They recently did a test with a diligence and discovery project. Paralegals took 2 weeks. The bot took less than 2 hours and made fewer mistakes. Financial services, as you're all well aware, AI is a big deal here. The AI is all over each of these things. These things, something like risk management, there's such a huge amount of rapidly changing data that you need to crunch in order to really do that right. AI is better at that. It makes sense. Things like fraud protection. Now, agents are not even looking at the fraudulent cases nearly as often because the AI already can suss them out and weeds them out, and only the real ones end up in the agent's hands in the first place. There's all chat bots for customer service. So much customer service in financial services. Now a lot of the customer service is done by AI. In New York City, the hedge funds are now using AI almost exclusively for high-frequency trading. So you can just go on and on. It's all over the place. Like I said, J.P. Morgan Chase is using, they got rid of 200 full-time employees that used to be assessing these contracts, and now an AI does it. So there's some mixed emotions people often have right when they hear this. Is this a capitalist dream, or is this a labor nightmare, or is it a little of both? You hear these statistics that scare people, like 47% of jobs are going to disappear. But you have to remember something, that in 1900, 90% of the human workforce went towards feeding America. They were somewhere in the agricultural chain. Now it's 2% of Americans are doing that. So if someone just heard that stat, back then they'd say, oh my God, 88% of jobs are disappearing. But that's not how it works. There's something called the budding effect. Wilbur Budding invented the lawnmower in 1827. And at the time, it seemed like a cool invention for lawns, but actually the entire $500 billion professional sports industry was basically born once you could mow fields and make grass even. You don't think about things like this and all the jobs that came from that. So likewise, when electricity comes around, you don't think about the telecommunications revolution. You don't think about the computers and all of the jobs that have come from that. Movies happen because of that. When you have cars, okay, that's cool, but you don't think about the fact that now you have Holiday Inn and Walmart and McDonald's and suburbia, right? So you have to think about not just what the AI is going to do, but all of the other industries for humans that are going to be created. So some jobs will be lost, for sure. Other jobs will be enhanced. Like if you drove here with your GPS, the GPS didn't replace you. It was enhancing what you do. It was making your life better. When the car can drive itself, it's even better because now you can do higher level things than drive. You can work. You can write. You can do something else. So I think that no one's going to miss the days when we had to do the menial work. We're going to be happy that AI has taken that off our hands. And this is, again, this is all really really soon, all of this stuff. And none of this is even the craziest part. This is all just kind of the normal part, and it's still going to totally revolutionize stuff just like the internet did. And it's the small part of this, the prologue of the real big story here, which is what happens later when possibly we can create artificial general intelligence. So you know how much better AI is at us, at everything that it does? Well, what if it's just better at being generally smart than us? What would that be like? What does that mean? So just to understand the challenge here, it's that it's counterintuitive just how hard this is. We think of, the things we think are hard are things like, oh, well, calculus and engineering and these kind of things are hard. No, they're not. We only discovered those in the last 100 or 1,000 years, so it's easy to make a computer that can do those better than us. The things that have been worked on for billions of years are the way we walk, the way we see. Walking is this really complex physical thing going on. There's so much physics going on when you reach up to pull a light switch. There's an XYZ axis with all these joints moving simultaneously because there's 3.8 billion year software in your head that's been honed to be unbelievable physical machines. This kind of stuff is really hard. Sight. If I show you this and an AI this, you'll both see something pretty similar. Two-dimensional, rectangles and squares, pixels, simple. But if I pull the black part off and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what was underneath, then you see all this 3D stuff. The AI doesn't. The AI still sees a two-dimensional set of pixels. If I show you this, you see a 3D black rock. An AI sees a two-dimensional collage of white, gray, and black. That's really hard to get it to actually be able to understand what the real world is doing. Your brain's doing very fancy stuff when it understands what that rock is. Again, we can say beat the world chess master in chess, and the AI has no problem, but we say, hey, also, what did these words say? And the AI is like, shit, because why would this hurt? But because think about it, what's easier, getting an AI to know all the best move in chess, or getting an AI to understand the essence of a B? You know how many different, everyone here writes a B differently. You have different fonts, you have big bubble B. I mean, there's lowercase, uppercase, there's all kinds of different things that an AI is actually, it's really, really, really hard problem to get an AI to understand handwriting. We could say, hey, memorize every street in the world with all the traffic and everything else and give me perfect directions. And the AI says, no problem, I'll do that in 10 seconds. And we say, also just quickly tell me if this is a dog or a cat. And the AI is like, Jesus! This is not a great example because this one is hard for humans as well, but the point is that this kind of thing is really hard. They just see pixels, and it's very hard, and different lighting, different shading, and all the dogs look weird and different. And you try. It's not hard. The AI is in hell over there. You're out there living your life, and the AI is in absolute hell here. But that's changing because of reinforcement learning, because of machines that can learn. So machine learning is actually starting to make stuff that was basically impossible much, much easier. And so this was always kind of the situation that AI can do the stuff we do with thinking. It actually can't do the stuff that we do without thinking, but that is starting to change. You can see AI can now, there's robots that are pretty good. They can do backflips, a little scary. They used to not be able to walk very well. This is exponential progress happening in front of our eyes. So a couple things that need to happen still. Hardware. Our brains are remarkable. On 20 watts, they can do 10 quadrillion calculations per second. The equivalent supercomputer made of 1 million small computers that can do that runs on 20 million watts. So 1 million times more energy it takes. Right now, AI can do, the AI you can buy for $1,000 in your pocket can do about 1,000th of what the human brain can do in that regard. That sounds like it's far away until you consider that in 1985, it could do 1,000,000,000th of what the human brain could do. In 1995, it could do 1,000,000,000th. In 2005, it could do 1,000,000th. So when it's doing 1,000th today, we should realize, oh, we're just about there. This is exponential progress. It's going to, probably around that 2025 mark, it'll probably be able to do about what a human brain can do, and then it will quickly be able to do what the whole human species can do combined. That's exponential progress. The software side, how do you actually build general intelligence that can think like this? It's very hard. There's no one knows the answer. They're trying all kinds of different things. The most common thing is neural networks, plagiarizing the brain. We say we have a general intelligence computer on Earth right now that works really well. Let's copy it. The more extreme thing is whole brain emulation, when you actually, render an entire brain into a computer. That's a really advanced technology. Some people don't think it'll ever happen, some people do, but that would be, you would basically be able to upload yourself into a computer as you. You can also plagiarize the thing that built the brain, the computer, which is, so there's these, genetic algorithms where they actually have these programs that compete for this thing, and then the ones that do well are they're actually like their programming is combined. It's like they mate, and you end up with these really, again, innovative solutions to things that humans actually never thought of, which is what evolution does. Evolution comes up with all kinds of crazy innovations that no one could have really designed it that way. And then finally, eventually, when AI gets to a certain point, we're going to let it do the work by saying, your goal is not to win at Go, and your goal is not to assess mammograms or drive cars. Your goal is to make yourself smarter. So research AI, and actually don't just change what you know, change your own architecture. And this could be a very intense situation because when you start having that, things can move very quickly, and we have a very distorted, just like we have a distorted view of progress, the exponential curves, we also have a distorted view of intelligence. We're just not really built to understand how the scale works. So we kind of see it like this. We have like Einstein's super smart, and then dumb humans are quite dumb, and then way down there at the bottom you have animals they're really dumb, and that's it. It's pretty simple. So when right now, an AI can't do any of these things, but soon it'll be able to do what an ant can do, and then a bird can do, and then a chimp can do, and we'll say, oh, look, we'll all be passing around the YouTube video of the AI robot playing with monkeys. It'll be so cute. Even when the AI has reached dumb human level, because 5-year-olds are dumb, and an AI is playing with 5-year-olds, and it'll be this adorable YouTube video, oh my God, he's friends with the kids, and then suddenly the next day, he's actually smarter than everyone, because it really is much more like this. It's really soaring upwards to us. There's such a huge different level in between these different animals, and then when you get to humans, the difference between a dumb human and a smart human is tiny. All of them have this magical general intelligence, and it's just incremental at that point, so it will surprise the shit out of us, I suspect, and it'll very quickly, suddenly, the smartest thing on Earth is by far computers. And it can go like that. Maybe it takes 5 years or 10 or 20 years. Maybe it takes a week. Really, this is the kind of crazy thing that can happen when you've got computers that can improve themselves with exponential progress, and you could quickly have this. So this is just artificial general intelligence, but it's going to be so extreme, so much more powerful than what we can do, that we actually have a different term, just artificial superintelligence. But all that really means is incredibly powerful general intelligence. So trying to actually get there, people talk about the takeoff speed. So once you have general intelligence, it'll be very low level for a while. Like I said, it'll be playing with monkeys and trying to do the things they can do. The takeoff speed is the term they use for how quickly does it go from we have basic general intelligence to it's now surpassed humans, the takeoff speed. Because of this recursive self-improvement, well, the thing makes itself smarter, which now means it can make AI smarter faster. So it makes itself smarter even faster this time. You can see how that quickly goes into an intelligence explosion where if, you picture this kind of scene here. We're a couple steps above chimps, just say. This is really probably about the magnitude realistically where we are. So just 2 steps above humans. Okay, that's the distance between us and a chimp. That's not that different, but think about what it does for us. That little 2 steps. A chimp looks up at the night sky and sees a little light going by. It just assumes it's like a moving star. It has no idea. We couldn't even explain to it if we wanted to that actually that's a satellite. We put that there. This building you're in, we made this. It not only can it not do what we do, it can't even understand that we did it, even if we tried to tell it. So what if we have an analogous situation where this AI is making innovations and building things and coming up with scientific discoveries that not only can we not understand it or do it ourselves, we can't even get that it did it. That's how high level it is. We can't even understand the thing it did. That's 2 steps above. Now, how good is that thing at making itself smarter if that's its goal? Really good. And before you know it, this is the last slide. It could be all the way up there. This is the kind of thing that is very intense about our future, that you have to get in this right mindset and appreciate the just absolute exciting and scary and fun and terrifying time we happen to be born in. So people like to then the natural question is, okay, so when is this happening, and then how will this turn out? Is this going to be good or bad? If we have God on the planet, essentially, is this a good God, or is it one of those dick gods that we, like from the Old Testament or something? We don't want, how do we ensure that this is going to go well? A lot of people think, as far as the when question, that we are really close. Some people think we're farther away, and they did a huge survey recently. Nick Bostrom conducted a big one of like the 150 AI experts, prominent AI experts. But a lot of these people are the biggest skeptics. So these aren't all people who think it's. A lot of these people. Some of these people say we will almost never get to artificial general intelligence. But this was the median for on the question: when is it 50%? When is it more likely than not that we have general intelligence and then super intelligence? Way past humans on this planet. These are really close states. You will be fatter then, but not that much, maybe. And so then, if this is probably going to happen, well, how is this going to be? And we don't have an answer. And you'll hear 10 different experts contradict themselves and contradict each other, which is what it always is like when we don't really know what we're talking about yet. But I tried to, and I read hundreds of experts, and I tried to plot them on this. Are they soon or later, and good or bad? And I found a lot of people in two places. One was here. There's a lot of people that feel really good about this. Like, this is going to not just, if you solve intelligence, you solve every other problem. It's like, how much could a human help a chimp with his problem, with his breaking the coconut? We have all kinds of tools, right? It's like that. Everything we think is hard, disease, poverty, climate change, whatever you want to say, the biggest problems that in your mind are, like, this thing can make it easy. So they're excited. There's also a lot of people, that don't necessarily think we're going to have everything forever. They think, I call them on anxious avenue. They're not catastrophists. They don't think it's definitely going to be bad, but they are nervous. And they're nervous because, humans didn't hate the African West African rhino when we drove it extinct. We weren't saying, ha, now it's our world. No, we just were doing our thing, and they were in the way. When you build a house on an anthill, you kill all the ants, not because you hate ants, you're just doing your thing, and you were a really powerful species, and they're in the way. So if the AI's goals aren't perfectly aligned with us, we're building this incredible power. And we don't want to be accidentally have a house built on us. And so this is the kind of thing that makes the AI researchers nervous. And software is buggy. 1.0 software is very buggy usually. We can't do that here. It's like launching the Saturn V to the moon. You don't want to have a buggy first one there. You want to get it right the very first time, and that's how we are here. So as exciting as this is, we don't want an arms race. We don't want everyone throwing caution to the wind. We want to have a generally kind of international understanding of the importance of AI safety, because they're worried that we're just kind of like a bunch of kids playing with a bomb. It's not really evil people or evil robots. It's just a bunch of kids playing with a bomb, and they don't really know what they're doing. That's the people who are worried. Other people are less worried. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't have a strong opinion myself, because I hear too many people smarter than me say opposite things. So all I can say is that the stakes are high. It's probably the last invention we'll ever make, because if it works, it'll invent things for us, and if it doesn't work, then we'll be extinct, and you'll have to invent things. Last challenge we'll ever face. And I hope at least I've convinced you that this really might be where you're standing right now. And so you can take that and do with it what you might. And I thank you for listening.